Hello everyone, and welcome to the Chivalry 2 Weapon Academy. In this series, we'll be going over individual weapons and how to best utilize their strengths and make up for their shortcomings. Today, we'll be going over the most difficult to use weapon in all of Chivalry, the Katars. Let's begin with the basics. The Katars are a low damage and low range but high speed option. In fact, the Katars have the fastest speed in the game. With rapid-fire combos, this is a stab-intensive weapon that can overwhelm enemies with its difficult-to-read, swift stabs. You can pair these incredibly fast attacks with the backstab bonus of Ambusher to snag yourself some great kill chains. Unfortunately, this is where the positives end. The Katar have numerous weaknesses, which are important to understand if you're going to perform well with them. Katar cannot flinch on hit. This means that when fighting an enemy, you'll need to attack within the small windows where the enemy is not attacking, or you'll need to acquire a new skill, attacking while the enemy is attacking, and then quickly recovering before their attack lands. This is possible because of a mechanic in the game which completely cancels your recovery if you successfully land an attack, even if the enemy blocks. Basically, as long as you don't miss, you should be able to block the enemy's follow-up or dodge out of the way with your incredibly fast attacks. This strategy is more than viable. I say all that, but this isn't easy. Katars have a passive decrease to stamina drain negation, equal to 25%. This means you take 25% more stamina damage when blocking an enemy's attack. Let's put this into perspective. Mini rant here, but you might not realize just how massive 25% is. When the Heavy Mace got a 20% increase to stamina drain negation, it became top 5 overnight. It's important to understand this because when you're using Katar, you essentially have less stamina than a knight. This brings us to the next issue. You have no jab. When using the Katar, your jab is replaced with the headbutt. This animation is really cool and funny, but the novelty of it wears off fast. Unfortunately, this is a much slower animation that has similar properties to jab in that it does 10 damage and flinches the enemy. Unfortunately, it does not have jab collision and cannot be feinted to. Because of this, a useful way I've found to use this is to perform a miss into headbutt, where I purposefully miss and combo into a headbutt. Typically, it's fast enough to get a lick in, which will grant you initiative. The special isn't that great either, but it's one of your best attacks. The special is incredibly unique, offering the Katars a 2-hit combo dealing 30 damage each, both of which have special properties. Unfortunately, you can't move while using it. The only interesting note for this attack is that if the opponent happens to block the first strike, the second strike will land, as the first one would have stunned them. Unfortunately, the second strike will deal half damage and is unable to kill the enemy. I will say that although the overhead has incredibly low damage, it has a wonderfully shaped arc that allows it to bypass blocks by hitting around the enemy if the attacks are well placed. It also has decent range. Relatively speaking, of course. It's a great finisher on low health, unsuspecting opponents. Your slashes are unfortunately just a variant of your stab. The Katars actually work like the spears in that they cannot slash. The animation does, however, have you punching horizontally instead of vertically, which slightly widens the hitbox, making the attacks easier to land. Although, this is at the cost of damage and range. Determine for yourself when to slash or stab. Okay, so if the weapon has this many downsides and pretty much sucks in every regard, how are you supposed to actually use it? Well, let's get something straight. This is not a great weapon, nor will it ever be. It has too many downsides for me to consider it viable, but there is always an optimal way to use anything, so the Katars can naturally be optimized. Using Katars, your biggest weakness are fights with multiple individuals. Avoid team fights as much as possible and attempt to get yourself into a 1v1. Beat the opponent by using superior footwork and well-placed counters, getting around their block if possible. It's important to understand that even in situations where you could win a 1v2, it may not be worth it. Not only will some 1vx fights be straight up Ls, but even those kills that end successfully will take longer than if you were to use any other weapon. The Katars are not some sleeper weapon that makes you a glass cannon or gives you great DPS. It's just weak. Regardless, you need to adopt a playstyle similar to the dagger, picking your batters carefully, getting backstabs on enemies when you can. Disregard the leaping strike completely and prioritize landing heavy stabs to the back. Your worst enemies are going to be men-at-arms. Their holding block-intensive playstyle mixed with their increased strafing speed makes out-footworking them extremely difficult. Their fast weapons also make it impossible to land attacks between their combos. Because of this, I suggest escaping them to the best of your ability in favor of other targets. When using the Katars, you need to understand you simply can't win certain situations, so just put yourself in better situations. all around, Katars will teach you to be a more careful player with what I could only describe as a picky eater style of play. You find yourself prioritizing targets who are easy and quick to kill so you don't have to suffer the drawbacks of your loadout as much, and you carry over that style of play to any ambusher weapon. The Katars are one of my favorite weapons, but don't feel too bad if you can't make them work straight out the gate. They have a high learning curve and don't reward your efforts with many advantages, but they do leave you looking cool as hell. Best of luck out there, ambusher.
God damn it, gross. I'd pick up your head, but I don't have an arm. Oh my god, that's crazy.
Oh, you're
Put me out of
so
my
lucky!
misery.
Oh my god, you're so lucky!
Who is this fucking question mark dude?
Dude,
What the fuck was
the
that?
ultimate Katar gameplay.